The whole world is obsessed with football, but you feel like an alien on your own planet? Let's decode why your brain chooses silence. Imagine for a moment that it is a Sunday afternoon, or perhaps a Tuesday night in the middle of a crisp autumn. You walk into a local coffee shop, or maybe you're just scrolling through your social media feed, and there is a palpable electric tension in the air. The world seems to be vibrating at a single frequency. People are wearing specific colors, screaming at television screens in bars, or typing in frantic capital letters about a blown call or a miracle play. For millions of people, this is the heartbeat of culture. But then, there's you. You're standing there, perhaps holding your latte or looking at a book, feeling like a traveler who has landed on a planet where everyone is speaking a language you never learned. You see the passion, you hear the roar of the crowd, but inside your brain, there is no spark, no adrenaline, just a quiet, lingering question. What am I missing? It is a fascinating social phenomenon because, in many parts of the world, football isn't just a sport, it's a secular religion. Whether we are talking about the tactical chess match of American football or the fluid global dance of soccer, the game acts as a primary social glue. So when you are someone who simply doesn't care about the scoreboard, you aren't just opting out of a hobby. From a psychological perspective, you are opting out of a massive collective consciousness. But why? Is your brain wired differently? Are you missing a tribal gene? Or have you simply found a different way to satisfy the deep human need for belonging? Today, we're going to peel back the layers of the non-fan psyche to understand the quiet rebellion of the person who stays home while the rest of the world is at the stadium. To understand why some people don't watch football, we first have to look at what happens inside the brain of someone who does. When a fan watches their team, their brain is performing a feat of biological mimicry. Thanks to something called mirror neurons, the fan isn't just watching a player run, their brain is internally simulating those movements. When the striker misses a goal or the quarterback throws an interception, the fan feels a physical pang of cortisol, the stress hormone. When the team wins, the brain is flooded with dopamine and oxytocin, the bonding chemical. For the fan, the I becomes we. But for you, the non-fan, those mirror neurons might be perfectly healthy, yet they aren't calibrated to the specific stimuli of the gridiron or the pitch. Your brain looks at 22 people chasing a ball and sees exactly that. 22 people chasing a ball. The abstract layer of meaning that converts movement into drama simply isn't being projected onto the screen for you. This lack of projection is actually a window into a very specific type of cognitive processing. Many people who ignore football tend to be highly analytical, or perhaps more focused on individual agency rather than collective identity. If you're the type of person who values logic and efficiency, the high-variance nature of sports might feel inherently irrational to you. Why, your brain asks, would I tie my emotional well-being to the physical performance of strangers I will never meet? There is a certain psychological independence in this. You are refusing to outsource your happiness to a scoreboard. While your neighbor's entire Monday morning mood depends on a referee's decision on Sunday night, your mood remains under your own jurisdiction. In a way, not watching football can be a sign of a highly localized emotional economy. You invest your feeling capital in things you can directly influence: your work, your art, your family, or your personal growth. However, being a non-fan in a sports-centric culture often comes with a subtle psychological tax, the feeling of the great exclusion. Humans, at our core, are tribal animals. For thousands of years, survival depended on being part of the group, sharing the same myths and fighting the same enemies. In the modern world, sports teams have become our civilized tribes. When you don't watch the game, you lose the water cooler currency. You sit in the office or at the dinner table and listen to people dissect plays with the intensity of surgeons, and you realize you have nothing to contribute. This can trigger a mild social threat response in the brain. It's that nagging feeling of being an outsider. But here's the beautiful twist. Many people who don't watch football have developed a high social non-conformity threshold. You've become comfortable with the silence. You've learned that your identity doesn't need to be validated by the roar of 50,000 people. Let's talk about the concept of overstimulation and temperament. For some, the aversion to football is less about the sport and more about the environment. If you are someone with a more introverted or highly sensitive temperament, the sensory profile of football is overwhelming. The shouting, the bright stadium lights, the aggressive marketing, the constant high-stakes commentary. It's a lot of noise. Your brain might naturally crave low arousal activities. While a fan gets a high from the chaos, you might find that same sense of flow and dopamine in a quiet garden, a complex coding project, or a deep conversation. It's not that you lack passion, it's that your passion is directed towards depth rather than spectacle. You're trading the horizontal breadth of a massive crowd for the vertical depth of a singular focus. There is also a fascinating psychological element regarding narrative transportation. Most sports fans are hooked because they see a story, a hero's journey, a comeback, a betrayal. They see the veteran player looking for one last trophy as a protagonist in an epic poem. If you don't watch football, it might be because you require a different kind of narrative structure to feel engaged. Perhaps you find sports narratives too repetitive or unscripted in a way that feels unsatisfying. You might prefer the controlled thematic richness of a novel or a film, where every movement has a symbolic purpose. In your mind, the chaos of a live game lacks the curated meaning that your brain specifically hungers for. You aren't boring, as some fans might jokingly suggest. Your brain is simply a specialized curator of meaning, and it has decided that the football narrative does not meet its criteria for a story worth following. We should also consider the time value perception of the non-fan. A single football game can take upwards of 3 hours. For a dedicated fan, those hours are an investment in emotional catharsis. For the non-fan, those 3 hours are seen through the lens of opportunity cost. You might look at a 3-hour broadcast and think about the 2 chapters of a book you could read, the meal you could cook, or the rest you could get. This reflects a psychological trait often found in people who prioritize intentionality. You are highly protective of your cognitive bandwidth. In an age where every app and media outlet is fighting for a piece of your attention, your refusal to give 3 hours to a game is a radical act of boundary setting. You are the architect of your own time, and you refuse to let a league schedule dictate your Sunday. Sometimes the psychology of the non-fan is rooted in early childhood associations. We often forget how much our adult preferences are shaped by our first mirrors, our parents and peers. If you grew up in a home where football was forced upon you, or if you were the kid who was picked last in gym class, your brain might have formed a protective detachment from the sport. To you, football isn't just a game, it's a symbol of a hierarchy you didn't ask to be part of. By choosing not to watch as an adult, you are reclaiming your autonomy. You are saying, I no longer have to perform this version of masculinity or social belonging to be valid. It's an act of healing, a way of finally being true to the kid who wanted to catch butterflies or draw instead of catching a ball. But what about the social chameleons? There are people who don't care about the sport, but still show up to the parties for the snacks and the company. Psychologically, this is a brilliant display of cognitive flexibility. You're able to enjoy the peripheral benefits of the tribe, the warmth, the food, the laughter, without needing to subscribe to the core dogma. You are there for the people, not the pigskin. This shows a high level of emotional intelligence. You recognize that the game is just a vessel for human connection, and while the vessel doesn't interest you, the connection does. You can sit through a Super Bowl party or a World Cup final with a smile, observing the human behavior around you like a gentle anthropologist, finding your own fun in the joy of others. Interestingly, there's a growing group of people whose lack of interest in football is actually a form of moral or intellectual friction. You might find yourself distracted by the commercialism, the injuries, or the billionaire owners. Your brain, which might be wired for high levels of social justice or systemic thinking, can't turn off its critical faculty to just enjoy the game. You see the concussion protocols or the gambling advertisements, and the fun is drained from the experience. This doesn't make you a buzzkill, it makes you someone whose values are deeply integrated into your leisure time. You find it hard to compartmentalize, and in a psychological sense, that integrity is a strength, even if it makes you the odd one out at the sports bar. As we look at the world today, the psychology of the non-fan is becoming more relevant than ever. We are moving away from a monoculture where everyone watches the same 3 channels into a multiculture of infinite niches. You are a pioneer of this new world. By following your own curiosity, whether it's history, pottery, gaming, or linguistics, instead of the default social hobby, you are contributing to a more diverse and interesting social fabric. You are proof that there are 1,000 ways to be human, 1,000 ways to find excitement, and 1,000 ways to belong. So, the next time you hear that roar from the neighbor's house or feel that awkward silence when someone asks, "Did you see the game last night?" take a deep breath and smile. You aren't broken and you aren't missing out. Your brain has simply chosen a different path through the woods. You have traded the thrill of the stadium for the clarity of your own interests. You have traded the tribal scream for a sovereign mind. There is a quiet power in being the person who doesn't watch the game, because it means you've found something else that makes your soul feel just as alive. And that is a victory no scoreboard can ever record. If you've spent your life feeling like the weird one for not knowing who's in the playoffs, I'd love to hear what you do.
You're not alone here. Subscribe to Life Decoded.